thank you for joining us live. I'm here tonight with John Kelly, the ultra running former triathlete who in 2017 was the only finisher of the Barkley Marathons and the 15th ever finisher. So today he's here to chat to us about his Grand Round, which he did last week and over the weekend. So we're going to talk to John a little bit about his Grand Round, and then we'll cover some questions on the Barkley Marathons as well. So let's just set the scene first, John. You've just moved to the UK, is that right?
Yeah, about 2 months ago now.
Yeah, and what's it like settling in Bristol?
It's been pretty good, learning some new terms, a few new ways of doing things, and getting all settled in. But it's been great so far, and just been a really cool area that we've moved into.
Yeah, Bristol's lovely, isn't it? I've seen that on social media you've discovered stinging nettles.
Yeah, we don't really have those in Tennessee. I guess other parts of the U.S. they do. I think in Tennessee it must be they're all smothered out by the poison ivy, poison oak, poison sumac, briars, and everything else that we've got.
Yeah, so they're a new thing for you. Have you found dock leaves as well? They usually grow quite near to the stinging nettles, and you can rub them on.
Yeah, people have told me to try that out, so I'll keep an eye out on those. But yeah, it's I've gotten it pretty bad on a few runs, and I'd be about willing to rub anything on it to help. Yeah,
I think the best thing to do is just to avoid them. So now you know what they are, then that'll be easier.
Yeah, and stick to the actual well-trod footpaths. I've got the OS Maps app. And, it marks all these footpaths on there that many of them are definitely, they might be right-of-ways, but there's no paths there. So I've kind of combined that with OS Maps and the Strava heat map to see which ones people actually go on. And that's working quite well for me.
That's a really good tip, actually. Yeah, I like that, because there's loads of fields around my way where the farmers, they just don't plough a path through, so you're just kind of hopping through mud and nettles and crops and stuff.
Yeah. And you see that on the Strava heat map, the nice, well-defined line just kind of scatters as everyone who encounters that section just kind of makes it up to get across one field.
Yeah, finds their own way round, yeah. And talking about new things for the UK as well, there's a question from a patron of mine called Guy Greatrex, and he says, what's it like being American in Bristol? Like, can you figure out the accent yet? Because they've got quite a distinctive twang over there, haven't they?
No, I haven't quite figured out different UK accents. I know the Scottish accent. I can pick that one out, of course. It's also interesting from the other side, realizing that they wouldn't understand subtleties in my own accent. If I were true to how I should be talking, it'd be about like this, I wouldn't be running over yonder mountains. But it's all just kind of, to us, that's a British accent, and to them, there's the American accent. And especially where we live 6 miles south of Bristol, out in the countryside. And, I keep thinking to myself, what would it be like if someone from the UK moved to the rural, middle of nowhere community where I grew up, and it'd be, that's the British people, and so that's what we are. We're the American people.
Well, I really like that accent that you just did for us just now. I think you should continue to do the whole broadcast in that accent.
Well, I reckon I could try.
That would be awesome. I love that accent. That's like from the deep south, isn't it? That's great.
Yeah, that's the hillbilly accent about where I grew up, which I had pretty thick as a kid. But then I moved to the city, and they made fun of me, and as any 8-year-old would do, I changed. So.
Oh. Let's just talk about your youth as well. So you started running from quite a young age, didn't you? You were pretty good in high school.
Yeah, I was solid in high school. I wasn't great. I wasn't, getting college scholarship offers or anything like that, or winning too many races. But I was good, not great, is how I would classify it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I grew up running and playing baseball, mostly kind of chasing my brother and cousins around. My brother ran. He was much better than me in high school, actually. And then I kind of took 10 years off as I went through school and university and grad school. And I came back to it in my late 20s when I just kind of decided how I wanted to see how I could do it the longer distances, and then longer and longer, and discovered I kept getting better the longer the distances got.
Nice. So that's how you sort of gradually transitioned into long distance running then?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fantastic. And so for anyone over here that's not familiar with your running and your achievements, what would you say over the last few years are the races that you've been most proud of?
Well, I mean, obviously you put Barkley at the top of that list. So that's something I worked for years, and was always that kind of thing that for me, again, I started out as kind of just this pipe dream, and as I kept improving, it got slightly more realistic over time, and I failed twice at it, and eventually was able to finish just with 30 minutes to spare, which in a 60-hour race is you put that in terms of, if I had taken 30 seconds longer every 1 hour, I wouldn't have finished. That's how razor sharp things are in Barkley. Outside of that, I've done quite well in a number of other ultras. I also spent some years doing ultras in the winter and triathlons in the summer. So I have done Kona a couple of times. Had my professional triathlon debut and finale last November. So I guess outside of Barkley, my two most interesting things, I hold the Guinness record for fastest marathon dressed as a video game character.
Amazing. Which one is that? Which character?
Link from Zelda.
Oh, I don't know who that is. From Zelda.
He wears a big green tunic, which wasn't the best choice. I did it at Boston, and it was a headwind year. It was like a parachute. But then the other, I hold the record for slowest swim ever in a sub-9 hour Ironman.
Wow, that's incredible. I was going to say, yeah, you've got some sub-9 Ironmans to your name. How slow is the swim then?
1:17.
Oh, wow, okay, yeah.
So,
still a good swim, but yeah, to still get a sub-9 after that.
Yeah, that was my one race where I went pro, and the pro athlete coordinator, she was visibly shocked when I came to get my bike. That there's still someone coming out of the water? How did you get in here?
Yeah, so you've put somewhere on your blog, I've read that it was like the shortest pro triathlete career ever, and then you turned your attention just to ultra running. Is that how it happened? Summer and winter? Yeah,
for sure. It's where I'm a bit better. It's where overall I'm more passionate, and I feel like I still have a lot more things to discover. Triathlon, I feel like I kind of hit the limits of what I could do and what I could discover about myself, both mentally and physically. Unless I were to start training 40 hours a week, which I can't, and to be honest, I hate swimming, and try as I might, I'm never going to get as good at it as I am in the other disciplines.
Yeah, so you may as well just do what you love, which is what you've just done over here, and we'll get to that in just a moment. I just wanted to just let everyone know, because you're being very modest here, but you won the Franklin's 200 miler, and you also won the Wild Oak Trail 100 miler, and you've had loads of top 10 ultra results over in the States. So hopefully you're going to come here and do some races over here. Have you got any plans for racing over here?
Yeah, and so I've got quite a few, and I really enjoy these, and not necessarily the bigger races. Like you mentioned, the Wild Oak Trail, and that's quite a tiny race in Virginia. And I set my sights on getting the first ever sub 24 hour finish in it, and I just squeaked under at 23:48. And it was one of those things where I didn't know I was going to get it until like 10 minutes before I finished, is how close it was the entire time. And in terms of, I mean, I would put that right under Barkley in terms of things that I've done. And so I really enjoy finding those different challenges that wouldn't kind of be what everyone else would sort of immediately have spring to their mind. But I do at the same time, I moved to Europe, found out I was moving to Europe, and immediately said, oh, I've got to do this race and that one and this one. And I've kind of had to be restrained a bit to not do too much. So I have Lavaredo 120K coming up here in a few weeks. And then shortly after that, I have Ronda del Sims. And then a couple months after that, I have Tour de Giants. And then I am, I'll get a little bit of speed work in a couple marathons and rest up for the Spine in January.
Oh, you're going to do the Spine race?
Yep.
Wow. Oh, that's going to be exciting then.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I've always I've actually really enjoyed running in winter, but I haven't done what I would really classify as a winter ultra. I've done ones that have been quite cold, well below freezing, but never with a significant amount of snow, or really of that distance, like the Spine.
Wow. Well, that's exciting to know. Yeah, that's brilliant. So is that why you want to sign up then? Because you're really into running in winter and you like that sort of hardship?
Yeah, I think experiencing that, and again, just it being a race that I feel like is well suited to my strengths in terms of the difficulty and the distance. In general, I do better the more miserable the conditions are. So, it's just one that I would really love to experience, and again, be a great way of really taking in as much as I can of living over here while I am here and have that opportunity.
Fantastic. Yeah, well, you've definitely come to the right country for miserable conditions. I can guarantee you that.
I don't know. It seems like, this is what I would have said before my experience last week, but the conditions here are kind of always slightly uncomfortable, but never miserable. People keep telling me, oh, you can have all 4 seasons in one day here, and I can easily see how that happens because all 4 seasons are pretty much the same.
We're not too extreme, I suppose. You can't, it's like it's not as extreme as America.
In Tennessee, on a spring day, I've experienced in 12 hours, and I apologize, I still haven't made my full conversions to Celsius yet, but, I've experienced swings of 20 degrees Fahrenheit to 80 degrees Fahrenheit within 12 hours. And, where I'm living now, they don't see that in 12 months.
Yeah, that's true. I think we just moan a lot, the Brits, don't we? You'll find that. Always moaning about the weather. Which does bring us quite nicely to your Grand Round attempt over the weekend, because I've just been looking on Twitter and the conditions didn't look great for that. So just so that everybody here knows exactly what we're talking about here. So John basically set up his own challenge, fastest known time, over the 3 classic rounds in the UK. So that's the Paddy Buckley, the Bob Graham, and the Ramsay round. And just on top of all that, if that wasn't enough, he decided to cycle between all of them. So the total mileage by bike is 400 miles. By running, it's 185 miles. There's a total of 84,000 feet of ascent, and it's a grand total of 113 summits. So you were aiming to do that in 100 hours, which is about 4 days. Is that right, John?
Yeah, that was the goal.
Yeah. So just take us through. First of all, actually, let's just go to a question from Guy Greatorex. Actually, what gave you the idea for such an epic challenge? Because it's not what everyone does when they get to the UK. Yeah.
So I again kind of got in that state of, wow, I'm moving. I need to take in as much as I can. What are the cool things I want to do? I started looking at the rounds more and thought, wow, I should try to do them consecutively. that would be pretty cool. And then I thought, I wouldn't want the whole driving bit to be a variable in this equation. I want this to be completely powered by my own legs, self-propelled. So, I do quite enjoy cycling. That was one aspect of triathlon that I liked. So I thought, well, I still have my fancy triathlon bike. I might as well put it to good use and see what I can do here. I guess I don't know that it's fastest known time. I guess it would be only known time.
Yes, that's true, because Mike Hartley, he did it in 1990, didn't he? But he was driven from peak to peak and presumably slept in the car. And he got it done in three days, 14 hours and 20 minutes, which is quite impressive. So 4 days for biking between it. That's really impressive.
It is, and I didn't set this up as any sort of comparison to what Mike did or any sort of trying to one up what he did. It's an incredible feat, and you could even say maybe tougher, given that he has less running recovery between his rounds, less time for his legs to recover from all that pounding. Whereas the biking portion, I was just a really easy spin, essentially, is what I was going with. But it really just set this up as my own challenge in combining the things that I love doing. It was quite tough to plan, given that no one had really done it as far as laying out the schedule. So that was a difficulty with it, and something that I could do much better now, but it was great to learn that and to experience as much of it as I did.
Yeah, so let's just take people through it, just kind of round by round. So you started off at the start of the Paddy Buckley round, is that right? And got on with that one. What was that like?
Yeah, so I started at Capel Curig, given that finish would give me the shortest bike up to the lakes. And, had planned for essentially a start at first light. I had this impossibly ambitious idea that I was going to finish Paddy Buckley, get a few hours of sleep, start my bike again at first light the next day, and then from first light until last light of the day after that, get in my first bike, Bob Graham, and my second bike, to where I would never be biking in the dark. Is that's something I haven't really done before and didn't really care to do. So that part was, I now know, though, rather impossible. And so, I started off in Capel Curig. We got a room at an inn. I thought, I'll sleep well that way. And they put us in a room right above the pub. So I hardly slept the night before. And was not off on a good start, given that was kind of the thing I was most concerned about, to be honest, was fitting the sleep in and still being alert enough to be safe on that second bike leg. Because, it's one thing to be wandering around the fells when you're tired. It's another to be driving on a narrow mountain highway, or biking on a narrow mountain highway. But all the same, Paddy Buckley got started off quite well. The first leg went well. The rain started literally the minute I stepped out the door on that day. We saw the sun go between the top of the mountain and the cloud bank, like just that much of a sliver in the sky. We saw the sun go through, and that was the last I saw of the sun the entire time.
Oh no. And did you have a good crowd with you to keep spirits up?
I did. We had a few pacers on each leg, and very strong and good pacers, which that's something that, again, like the support for this really still just blows me away, especially later on in the attempt as my schedule kept getting pushed back. And still, there were people that I didn't even know showing up in the middle of the night in near hurricane-like conditions to help me out. Like, that was just, it's unbelievable.
Welcome to the UK. It's a nice welcome.
but it was about the second leg where the weather really went from bad to just awful, where we started to get, the 50-mile-an-hour winds with the rain, the kind where it's just, it hurts. It's like getting a barrage of BBs in your face. And at one point going down from Snowdon, the rain it was coming up, because the wind was whipping over the ridge and blowing it up into your face. I mean, there was really no way that you could protect from it. So that was, that was quite the rough conditions, and really started to slow down on the last couple legs of Paddy Buckley, where I didn't account for how much the conditions would matter. Of course, I expected it might rain in Wales. But, I've run in rain before, I've run in wind and cold conditions, but what really got me was some of those big descents are basically through boulder fields, and when those get wet, if you have any semblance of rational safety whatsoever, you can't go fast on those, so that really slowed us down. Even with that caution, I banged my knee up pretty bad on the final ascent of leg 4. And on leg 5, I might as well have just been hobbling around on crutches on the descents. And so that was rough, put me in a pretty worried spot finishing Paddy Buckley, not knowing if I was going to get to Bob Graham and still not be able to run on the descents. But, at that point, I went to get a bit of sleep and got out on my bike to get after it.
Wow. And what time did you complete the Paddy Buckley in?
It was 23:15, I believe.
That's brilliant. In such conditions, that is absolutely brilliant, because for anyone who doesn't know, the Paddy Buckley is 61 miles, it's 47 Welsh peaks, and it's 28,000 feet of climbing. So just even to do one, people train for years just to do one. So already this is an incredible feat. Just coming to the UK, whipping off a Paddy Buckley. And then so you set off after a couple of hours sleep to the 173 miles to the Lake District then. How did that go? Did people help support you on the bike as well as on the running?
Yeah, so there was, I didn't have any sort of anyone else biking with me until the very end, actually. Someone kind of gave me some company through the last stretch in the Lake District. But I was biking by myself and had someone in a camper van that was kind of leapfrogging me and stopping every couple of hours to refuel and catch a nap if need be or whatnot. So it rained off and on. The conditions weren't quite as bad as they were on the round. Still not great, but a couple naps and much slower than this is where the schedule really slipped a lot, because I kind of figured in laying it out, I can do 112 miles in the middle of an Ironman at averaging over 24 miles an hour. Surely I can average like 16, and that's easy, right? And I think my end average speed for the bike was like 12 miles an hour, which that's just after you're factoring in going through all these little towns and cities and stoplights and turns and traffic. And I actually, the worst spot was in Runcorn, where the pedestrian and bike bridge over the River Mersey is apparently closed from like 7 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. on weekdays.
Oh, no.
And so I hit that, and I kind of biked in circles a little bit, looking for another way across. Eventually, this guy told me that the only way I could get across the river was to get on a bus. And so I had to go wait on a bus, get on, ride it across the river, get off and ride back to the course that I had laid out. So that lost me quite a bit of time, and it was quite frustrating because I had planned quite specifically to, again, not move forward by any power other than my own legs. And I mean, sure, it was just over the river, but annoying nonetheless that I had to take a bus for a bit. So, all these things added up, and I got there. It was just much later than I originally planned for, was way behind schedule, and the conditions in the lakes were not looking any better than they had been in Wales.
Yeah. And so did you get any sleep once you got there, or did you literally just get off the bike, meet a load of people, and they were like, off we go, off the moot hall, and off we go?
Yeah, no, I got a few hours before starting Bob Graham, which was turned out to be quite critical because I was really fading at the end of Bob Graham in terms of needing sleep. And that's again
how much
where
sleep had you had just in total then for the whole? How many hours had you been going for then? About maybe 48 hours by then?
I mean, again, this is where the night before Paddy Buckley really starts to matter. Like that night in the inn above the pub didn't matter for Paddy Buckley itself. Like the night before a race isn't all that important, but by this time, that night was 2 nights before the race. And so if you count that, I was already at like 72 hours with maybe 6 hours of sleep.
Oh, wow.
Because I got 3 before Paddy Buckley, about 2 after, 40 minutes worth of napping on the bike, and then about 3 before Bob Graham. So maybe 8 or 9 hours and 72 hours. And so, yeah, that's a spot that I've been in very few times in my life, and really started to show at the end of Bob Graham, whereas if I had slept well before Paddy Buckley, that's how I should have felt after arriving in Scotland.
Yeah, because I suppose it's different, isn't it, from the Barkley? Because you've got, is it 60-hour time limit for the Barkley? Mm-hmm. So you're already over that. And I was researching, and you said you got more sleep in your 2019 Barkley than ever before, but actually you then didn't complete the 2019 Barkley. So you did better on all of the Barkleys where you only got an hour or so sleep before, or an hour and a half sleep. So it seemed like sleep doesn't matter, but maybe only for short stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there were a ton of other factors in this year's Barkley that led to me kind of, calling it quits while I was in the lead, essentially. This, knowing I had this coming up, honestly, was one thought that was heavy on my mind. The other thing that I really took away from this, though, this plus Barkley, plus my experience at Franklin's 200 this year, is that for this type of thing, you really can't cram on sleep. Like the few nights before, it's a cumulative thing from, a couple weeks before the race. I, in general, don't sleep nearly as much as I should, just between running and family and work. That's kind of sleep is what gets the short straw. So going into Barkley and Franklin's this year, I kind of had my normal sleep pattern, and then I tried to cram a whole bunch a few nights before, and was still kind of feeling it shortly into the race. Whereas before this, I slept very well 2 weeks, for a full 2 weeks going into it, and then just slept horribly the night before. So like on Paddy Buckley, I still felt good. Most of the bike, I still felt good, but then, again, on Bob Graham, it's where it really caught up to me.
Yeah, and so just tell us a little bit about what it was like on the Bob Graham then, because you said the weather still wasn't very good. What was the terrain like? Did you see any views at all? Because it's beautiful, the mountains.
Yeah, there were just a couple. Going in and out of Wasdale, the clouds lifted just a little bit. That's kind of the end of leg 3 and the start of leg 4. Otherwise, though, no, it was pretty well fogged in the entire time. And again, the winds were hitting 60 miles an hour on the summits, and raining pretty much the whole time. Maybe not quite as constant rain as Paddy Buckley, but still soaking wet. So it again went well until the last couple legs when the sleep started to get to me. I was again worried that I would get going and find that my knee still didn't work the way that it didn't at the end of Paddy Buckley. And so the first leg, I was kind of hesitant on it, ginger on it, if you will. And
Good
so, but it did all right, and I slowly regained confidence in it. And on leg 2 of Bob Graham, that was the best I felt of both the whole time, everything combined. Leg 2 of Bob Graham, I felt invincible. I knew that I would be coming down from Bid Nevis to the youth hostel 2 days later. Like I knew it was going to happen at that point. Nothing could stop me. Just again, those slow deterioration after that, with the sleep deprivation and the weather mentally getting to me, I think. So by the end of it, it took everything I had to not just go to sleep there on the side of on the hillside, even with the weather conditions. And I again kind of tweaked something in my leg, which may have been a result of altering my stride due to the knee. But we brought it in and got in under 24 hours, which at that point I was enormously proud of getting to that point, and happy, especially given the conditions of being able to do that.
Yeah, well, it's so incredible. I mean, like I said, for the Paddy, people trained for a couple of years to be able to complete the Bob Graham round, and to be able to complete it in under 24 hours, even though you've just done the Paddy Buckley and cycled there and not had very much sleep over the course of 72 hours prior. It's amazing, because for anyone who doesn't know the Bob Graham stats, it's about 66 miles, 27,000 feet of ascent, and over 42 peaks in the Lake District. So, so massive congratulations just for knocking that one off and another one and biking between them. It's absolutely incredible, I think. And then, so what happened at the end of the Bob Graham? Did you have time for most people have a pint, don't they, and a packet of chips from that chippy that's just next door to the Moot Hall. What happened next?
It was about 3 a.m, so things were closed, but it was really special coming up through Keswick to Moot Hall. That's something I'll always remember. But I was in a state of mind at that point where I honestly didn't see how I could get to Scotland. But at the same time, I knew that I needed to just kind of rest and see how I felt after that, and at least give it a go. One thing that I've kind of taken away from Barkley in these sort of things is never quit in camp. Which I did quit in camp at Barkley this year, but again, got a blog post on that. Entirely different mindset and set of circumstances I had for Barkley this year. But it's just it's too easy to quit when you're kind of at the aid station, or you're between loops, or you're in camp of any sort. You're too comfortable. Whereas if you get out there and get going again, and then you still want to quit, and you want to quit bad enough that you have to go back to the aid station or go forward to the next one, that's a different story. You just want to give yourself that minimal hurdle to quit. And who knows, you might get back out there and find that you feel great. Kind of like at the end of Paddy Buckley, the same thing. If it had been just me, like I was just doing this myself, I honestly may have quit after Paddy Buckley, because again, I didn't want to bike 180 miles only to find that my knee didn't function and it had all been for naught. But I knew all these people were waiting for me in the Lake District, and it was kind of like, I can't make that be for nothing. So I owed it to them to try to get up there, and unfortunately I did. And I had the same thing going on here, where all these people were waiting for me up in Scotland, despite me being like over a day behind schedule at this point. But at the same time, I rested. I got back out there. I did get on the road. I took some caffeine, but even coming out of Keswick, this slightest hill felt like the Alpe d'Huez, and I was already starting to feel groggy. And I did not feel like there was any possible way that I could safely make it to Scotland on those highways. And especially do it in any sort of reasonable time frame, because again, I greatly appreciate these people shifting their schedules and being there for it, but at the same time, I had already been going for like 4 or 5 days, and I do have an actual life with a job and a family that I have responsibilities for. So that's again where maybe if I had planned it for longer, that could have worked, but I didn't. I had things I had to do. And now I am glad. It's kind of funny, after Paddy Buckley, I had the issue with the knee that I thought was a huge deal and that I may not be able to run at Bob Graham, and it turned out fine. Leaving Bob Graham, I had this issue with my ankle that I didn't think was a big deal, and I thought, I'd be fine. But after stopping, not long after that, it was red and hot and swollen, and there's no way. Even if I had gotten to Scotland, I could not have run the Ramsay round on that. So, that's kind of where it ended.
And how many miles did you do on the bike, do you think, towards Scotland?
I was out there, probably not more than 10 miles. It was 45 minutes or so that I was out there, and again, normally that's about how long it would take my body to sort of wake up and respond. But again, given the factor that I'd taken caffeine and it was already starting to wear off, it wasn't there.
Yeah. And so how did you feel when you made that decision?
It was definitely tough. Like I said, it's something that, I was already that far into it, and knowing if I wanted to get that far into it again, I'd have to start all the way from the beginning. And there were, again, all these people waiting for me, and who knows the next time I would be able to try again. But likewise, I knew at that point, I'm experienced enough in this to know kind of what's real and what's not real. And at that point, I really couldn't make it any farther. And so I had to accept that. And I also, by that point, had realized all the things that I could have done better in planning and executing this. And I like to, when I do something like this, I like to know that I really gave it my best go. That regardless of what other people have done, that it's really the best that I could do. Like, there's this FKT on a trail near where I grew up that I got the unsupported FKT on it, but I'm not happy with how I did it. I think I could do better, and sort of the same thing here. Like, even if I had been able to do it, I would have known there were things I could do better, and I wouldn't be content with that. I need to sort of solve the puzzle and optimize those variables, and see what I can really do. And if it's I look at a challenge like that, if you can do it perfectly the first time, maybe it wasn't as much of a challenge as you thought it was. But no, this one was definitely every bit of as much of a challenge as I thought it would be, if not a bit more.
Yeah, it's a brilliant challenge. It's just such a great idea to dream up. I really, really like the challenge. And I think it's like you said, it's refreshing that you've planned such a good challenge that you can't do it first time. So that definitely begs the question, would you do it again? Because obviously, if you'd have tried it last summer, where we were having a really big heat wave, then you probably would have had a completely different experience on it. You might even have suffered from chafing or dehydration or something instead of this incessant rain. Are you going to go for it again?
Well, that's funny. I actually asked a few people afterwards. I was like, if I were to do this and try to choose the time of the year when, weather is most likely to not be awful, when would it be? And they just kind of thought for a minute and said, now. But you know, that's how it is. All that matters is the day you're actually doing it, and you know, the coin didn't fall my way. So yeah, you try it again. You still don't know what's going to happen. Maybe the weather's bad and I get a headwind on the bike. But again, there are a lot of things that are under my control that I can definitely improve. The schedule being one of them, when I start being one of them, to ensure I get good sleep the night before and in between the rounds. I don't think that 100 hours is realistic, not for me. Maybe if absolutely everything was perfect, the conditions, like all the stars aligned, maybe. But for something of that length, especially with the weather around here, I don't like that. Seems almost just statistically impossible. So I think 120 hours is probably the magic number for it being just barely possible. And that also gives, it's got the nice math of being 24 hours per each part, per each bike section, plus each round. So I think I'd lay out a schedule more along those lines for it. And we'll see. It's something I think I can do it. If anything, that this taught me that I think it is possible, and it is something I really want. But I've got, as we spoke earlier, I've got quite the schedule coming up over the coming bit here. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, this is it's quite exciting to think about the possibilities and to plan and in my head already starting to optimize some of those variables.
Yeah, well, it is interesting, isn't it? Because you did the 2 fun runs at the Barkley in 2015 and then 2016, and then 2017 you got it nailed. So maybe it's just a case of having another crack, and also the weather just sounds like it really wasn't on your side. I just got some questions here, some comments coming in live here. Stuart Smith says he saw you at Dunmail, that's on the Bob Graham Round, and you were doing great on a couple of soggy donuts, and you were setting off up the hill with Andy chasing after you, and you were really focused. He said top stuff. Just wanted to speak a little bit about your nutrition on the challenge, because you haven't mentioned any food apart from caffeine at the moment, and I did have a question from somebody saying, how do you keep focused on from Baz Green actually, how do you keep focused on regular tasks like nutrition, pace and navigation when your mind wanders?
Yeah, and the caffeine, I saved that for Bob Graham. I try to save that for when I really, really need it and things like this. On nutrition, it's something like this. Once you get into distances of this length, it's a whole new ballgame. Events 10 hours and less, Ironmans, 100Ks, things like that, I'm completely on, gels and Perpetuum and Hammer bars. Disclaimer, I'm sponsored by Hammer. And so that's my full lineup for anything of that nature. When you get longer than that, that's still kind of my foundation, where I know that I'm at least getting some of the right types of fuel. But at some point, you've got to just start tossing down whatever will agree with your stomach and with your mind at that point in time. I kind of liken this to, in shorter things, you're building a fire for cooking, where, you want to be sure you use the right wood to make it taste right. You want to keep it just the right temperature so that, everything comes out perfectly. And something like this, it's more you're kind of building a fire to while you're trying not to freeze and surrounded by a pack of wolves in the wilderness. You just toss anything that will burn on there. And so that's I had a large spread of various options, not knowing at any point in time what would be appealing to me. And so kind of my, as far as just getting calories down, I do have quite a sweet tooth. So donuts are great at aid stops because they're very caloric dense, and they are typically appealing to me. And then pizza is my other big one that I can typically get down at any point in time. And that's great because it's actually one of the more savory options that I have that works for me personally, versus just cramming sweets down my throat all the time, which, once you reach a limit on that, your stomach turns. And that's, again, where the hammer kind of helps because it's actually low on sugar compared to the other gels, so it gives me more of a buffer for that. So yeah, it's a strategy that I've developed trial and error through what works for me, and again, through experience, just remembering that you need to keep eating, even when you don't necessarily feel like it. You don't need to gorge yourself. I'm not a 300 calorie an hour person. I can typically get by on less than 200 easily. Ironman, I do like 140. So, it's, again, very, very individual, but definitely through experience, learning what does work for you, what you can get down, what keeps your energy levels steady, and then being able to remember to actually get it down. And this is also where the pacers were an enormous help, both with that and these other sort of, simple tasks like navigation and things that you just have to remember to do. That's something that's so hard about Barkley is it's all off course. You're navigating on your own just with a compass. You have no GPS. Whereas having the pacers here to rely on for navigation and for poking me every once in a while to remind me to drink or eat or do whatever, to where my mind could just kind of zone out and focus on going up and down and that one singular task. That was an enormous benefit. And so doing this sort of thing, self-supported or unsupported, would be a much more difficult task in my mind, just from that aspect alone.
And the pacers were around you a lot during the actual running, but you did mention that you had a long period on the bike where you weren't with anyone. Baz Green also wants to know what you think about when you're on your own for long periods. Like, how do you stay motivated?
It's a good question. I get asked that quite a bit, and a lot of various things. Sometimes I just completely zone out. Like, it's the one time for me where my mind is free to just disconnect, especially when I'm doing like my everyday running and I'm between work and everything else. And it's my one point in the day where it's just like, I don't have to think about anything, so I'm not going to. Other times I am thinking about, I'm trying to solve problems like from work that I've had, and it's just some great time for unstructured thinking when I can do that without getting interrupted or without feeling pressured. And other times it really is just kind of focusing on the next thing. Like that's the biggest thing on something like this. You cannot think about the end point. It's absolutely overwhelming. So, if I'm on the bike, kind of when's my next lap, my auto lap on my watch going to be? Where's the next town? Can I make it up this climb? During the rounds, it's just one summit to the next. Like, where's the next stop? Okay, where's the next one? Don't think too much farther ahead than that. But sometimes I'm also doing the math in my head on my pace and whatnot. So really, just whatever I can do to kind of keep myself, keep my mind alert, really, and relaxed.
Do you say something over and over again, or do you like ever sing or anything like that? I saw you playing. Did you play the bugle at the Barclays? Don't you have a high grade in playing the cornet?
Yeah.
So do you sing to yourself or anything? You're quite musical.
I do, especially when I'm trying to stay awake near the end, whereas my mind kind of slips to that point where it can only think about one thing. So I make sure that it thinks about the thing that matters. At the end of Bob Graham, I'm just thinking, get to Moot Hall, get to Moot Hall. There's a green door, get to Moot Hall. I do kind of start singing or humming silly songs to myself. I think at one point, there were Christmas carols going through my head coming down from Robinson, the last top on Bob Graham. So really, it is just whatever can pop into my head to keep it focused and rooted in reality, I guess, is the big thing. Because when you start to slip, it's really easy to just, I kind of start to blur the line between what's a dream and what's real. And I need to make sure that my mind is remembering, no, this is still real. You have to keep moving forward. We're not going to just wake up from this.
Yeah. And so do thoughts of your family ever spur you on as well? Because haven't you got twins, a girl and a boy, twins, and is there a third as well?
Yeah, so we have a 5-year-old boy and then a 2-year-old boy-girl twins. And so that's one of the more difficult aspects for me, both, and I discussed this with one of my pacers a bit during 3 until eventually I was just like, look, man, I've got to think about something else right now, because it is both one of the greatest sources of strength for me and one of the greatest, I don't know the right, I don't want to say, one of the hardest things to think about, because there are definitely those times I'm at the low points out there and I'm just in my head, why am I doing this? I could be at home in a nice warm room with my kids. Why am I out here? And that's tough. That's real tough, especially with, on this particular effort. They were all back in Bristol, and again, that's something that was on my mind at the end. I've been away from my family for this amount of time, but at the same time, it's also I want them to grow up seeing that you can do these types of things, both in terms of you can accomplish what you set your mind to, but also in terms of go do what you enjoy. Go take the time to do what you enjoy. Don't feel like you're bound to nothing but work responsibilities and responsibilities to other people. At some point, you've got to have some time to enjoy what you're passionate about. And so as well as me, taking those lessons to heart, I want them to see that and take those lessons to heart. So the kids are really a bit of a strength and a weakness for me when I'm out there. And if I do something like this again, I would really love to be able to do it when they can kind of come along and I can at least, see them between the rounds or something. Seeing them between loops at Barkley has always been pretty awesome.
Yeah, maybe they could be in the camper van or something like that, or some of the legs, you can drive a car between. That would be really cool. There's just on the live chat, Jonathan Watt says that he has girl and boy twins too, and he says they're amazingly good fun, but just such hard work. So yeah, people are feeling for you there. Loads of people are writing in just saying, yeah, total respect. Like Bracken Angel saying, as someone with a race with 100-hour cutoff coming up, I'm usually fairly open to this sort of thing, but this Grand Round is real WTF stuff. Amazing, John Kelly. So yeah, loads of respect coming in on the live chat here. So yeah, thanks. Everyone's really appreciating you chatting with us tonight, John. It's fantastic. And just got a couple of questions about, because that's amazing what you've told us about Grand Round. Absolutely incredible. And those little snippets of comparing it to the Barkley as well. Really, really enjoyed that. And I also really enjoy that your Barkley crew is made up of people beginning with J, with their names beginning with J. That's just the little aside there.
Actually, one of those came to crew me for Paddy Buckley, which that was awesome having a familiar face. He lived near me in Washington, D.C. for 5 years. And then about a month before I moved here, he got a professorship at University of Exeter. So we both moved across an ocean, and now we're still like an hour away from each other.
Oh, wow. That's great. So which J was he then?
Julian Jameson.
A double J. Oh, my goodness. Wow. So not only are you being interviewed by a ginger on the other side of the world, you have JJ with you as well to support you. That's amazing.
Just a strange alternate dimension where everyone speaks different.
Exactly. Yeah, that's amazing. And so, you've got tons of really cool races coming up. And so Rob Humphreys on the live chat has just asked, what about the UTMB as well? Because that's like a biggie that seems to be missing from your schedule at the moment. How do you feel about that one?
Yeah, I really want to give that one a go. It's a race that's well suited for me. I want to see how I do against that level of competition. Right now, the issue is I don't have the points for it, because I do these things like the Grand Round and Barkley and the Wild Oak Trail that, no ITRA points for those. So I should get enough this year with the other races I mentioned that I'm doing, and I do want to do UTMB for the course, and again to see how I do. On the other side of that as well, though, I'm, at Kona last year, someone asked me, what about UTMB? It's like this, like Kona is, except ultra running. And I kind of looked at it and I was like, that's kind of one of the reasons I'm quitting triathlon, is I'm not as much into the big hype type races. So I guess short answer to the question, yes, I'll definitely be doing that at some point, but maybe just once. We'll see.
Yeah, just for the experience, just to see what it's like, hey? Yeah, that's fantastic. So, that's all the questions that I had for you. And so I just want you to tell people where they can find out more about your Lavareda, your Ronde del Sants, the Tour de Gion and the Spine Race, because everybody needs to follow you, and your blog is amazing. Loads of information on there. Just let everyone know how they can follow you.
Yeah, so my blog is randomforestrunner.com. It's a play on words between my running and my data science profession. Random Forest is a big algorithm that's used there.
Oh, I didn't know that. I just thought that you like to run randomly around forests, like as in the Barkley Marathons.
And that's also my Instagram handle and my Facebook page, I believe, and my Strava, athlete ID, Twitter. I had to remove the vowels from the runner part because they don't let your handle be that long.
Oh, yeah.
But basically, if you just go to the blog, there are links to all of my other stuff on there.
Yeah, well, it's super interesting to read your blog on there. Everybody has loved the chat this evening. Sean Lockhart has just said, awesome guy, I just feel shattered hearing of his achievements. Great interview, catch you all soon. Loads of positive comments coming in. Basically just welcome to the UK. And the next time that you want to do one of these crazy challenges, then just let us all know, and we'll come out again and support you.
Thank you so much.
That's fantastic. So I'll say goodnight to you on the live chat now, John, and we'll say bye to everyone here, and I'll see you on Skype in a second.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone. See you out there on the trails.